Ron Johnson was done with this woke professor.
Did President Obama ever get a congressional authorization in his military action against Libya?
No, he did not.
You have blinders on.
No, I think
you have blinders on.
Of all the conversations that we can and should be having about the U.S. Constitution, this committee's focus on the Second Amendment strikes me as singularly misplaced. Every day we see headlines documenting other unconstitutional behaviors by this administration, from arrogating Congress's appropriations power.
During a Senate hearing on the Second Amendment, a law professor tried to argue that Congress should focus on other things while pushing anti-Trump rhetoric, but Ron caught on quickly, dismantling his points with a few sharp questions. And today, we're covering it all. So if you enjoy content that cuts through the noise, hit that subscribe button and let's jump right into it.
To blowing up suspected drug boats, invading Venezuela, and going to war against Iran without even a scintilla of congressional authorization, which led one commentator to post on social media that, quote, "It's a good thing Congress isn't alive to see this," unquote. Indeed, all of this unconstitutional behavior is coming not in the face of a hostile Congress, but without any attempt to even obtain statutory authorization, even though the president's party also controls both legislative chambers, including this committee. As for the nominal topic of today's hearing, it seems to me that at this moment in our history, devoting resources to the Second Amendment is burying all of our heads in the sand.
That's Steven Vladeck, a law professor at Georgetown University. He's also a best-selling author, on top of being CNN's Supreme Court analyst. He's also for gun control, but takes a more subtle approach. For instance, in an opinion piece published by NBC, he argued Justice John Paul Stevens was wrong to call for repealing the Second Amendment. Instead, he suggested gradual steps that would add up over time, since a direct push for a ban would rally people against it. The context explains why he tried to shift the conversation during this hearing. After all, the focus was supposed to be on strengthening Second Amendment protections. But when Ron Johnson got his turn, he cut through the mental gymnastics and took apart Vladeck's argument point by point. Take a look.
Professor Vladeck, I assume that you're not a Trump supporter. I mean, it doesn't sound like you're particularly enamored with this administration.
I'm not enamored of any administration, Senator, that doesn't commit to following the Constitution.
Right. You talked a lot about war powers. Has any president since the War Powers Act been passed accepted that as a constitutional constraint on that president?
I mean, I think
has anybody said that? Has any president admitted that this is a constitutional act?
I think we've seen presidents follow it, including President Carter.
But again, you're not asking, has any president acknowledged this is constitutional? Has any Supreme Court ruled on the constitutionality of the War Powers Act?
Well, no, because as I suggested in my testimony, the Supreme Court has made it hard to challenge this.
Did President Obama ever get a congressional authorization in his military action against Libya?
No, he did not.
Okay. Did President Clinton ever get congressional authorization in his military action in Kosovo and
so I think that one's a tougher question because it depends upon how you interpret the NATO treaty and some of the authorities under that. But
he did not get authorization. Congress did not declare war.
This is where hypocrisy really shows. Vladeck criticized Trump's 2018 Syria strike in a Vox interview, even though limited strikes have been used by multiple presidents before. But when it comes to actions under Clinton or Obama, suddenly it's framed as complex, almost as if NATO's charter supersedes U.S. law or the Constitution. And that's the issue with Steven and others like him. They're clearly knowledgeable, but the consistency just isn't there. Their stance seems to shift depending on who's in office, which tells you quite a lot about where the priorities lie. Ron then switched gears and focused on Iran, using it as an example to highlight why the Second Amendment is crucial. But before we get to that, here's a quick message from today's sponsor. Recently, the U.S. Department of Energy rolled out $2.7 billion to rebuild domestic uranium enrichment. Now, that's not routine spending. It's a declaration of intent. America needs uranium, and they need it now. But here's the gap. The U.S. consumes over 50 million pounds of it each year, but produces less than 1 million domestically. That leaves us heavily reliant on foreign suppliers. With Russia dominating enrichment capacity and escalating tensions in Iran, the exposure is real. That's where Kirkstone Metals enters the picture, trading as KSM in Canada and KSMCF in the US. The leadership team brings years of uranium and junior mining experience, with a history of building value through exploration. The question is simple: can they deliver again? Kirkstone owns 2 uranium projects in the Athabasca Basin, one of the richest uranium regions in the world. At their flagship Key Lake project, early drilling has already confirmed high-grade uranium near the surface, but the team believes the real prize lies deep underground. This basin accounts for over 20% of global discoveries, yet Kirkstone trades at a market cap below $12 million. That contrast becomes even more interesting when you factor in strong government mandates with rising uranium prices, with some forecasts pointing above $100 per pound by 2026. All of this makes Kirkstone strategically positioned to capitalize on the reshoring mandate. So, if you want to learn more about their story, check the link in the description below. A special thanks to Kirkstone Metals for making today's video possible.
You have blinders on.
No, I think presidents
you have blinders on. Now, let me ask another question. I thought it was very interesting in Representative Massey's testimony, the regime after regime after regime that he ticked off that the first action these totalitarians, these tyrants enacted was gun control, okay? I thought it was interesting because he was leading right up to, but he didn't mention the Ayatollahs. You know, Professor Vladeck, you're part of academia who I just think I'm not sure about Georgetown Law. You don't support the Ayatollahs in Iran, do you? Do you think they're anything less than a brutal, tyrannical threat and menace to world peace?
No, but I also don't think that's the standard for when presidents have the constitutional authority to send American men and women into harm's way.
That's a fair point, but what Ron was building towards is something broader. When governments turn authoritarian, one of their top priorities is consolidating their grip on power. That can take different forms like cracking down on free speech, limiting protests, or using legal pressure to silence opposition. But a key element is disarming the public, because it removes any real ability to push back. Once that happens, the state holds a full monopoly on force, and resistance becomes nearly impossible. History has shown this pattern across multiple countries, regardless of ideology. And that's the exact point Ron expanded on next, saying this.
Do you think it would be a good thing if the Ayatollahs were on the dustbin of history, that they no longer represent a threat and a menace to world peace? Do you think that'd be a good thing?
I mean, what I think and what this
You can't even answer that question?
Senator, I don't know why what I think is relevant. Yes, I do, but I also think that this committee should be more interested in what the Constitution provides for.
The point I want to make is they were a menace. They are an existential threat. I mean, they get a nuclear weapon. They've got missile technology.
And so law doesn't matter?
Park a barge off the U.S., lob a missile up, hit off, explode a nuclear weapon, wipe out our electrical grid. That's an existential threat. We had to act before we couldn't act. But the hope was, in acting, the hope is still there, that if we weaken the regime, the Iranian people can take control, regain their freedom. Why can't they? Because they've been disarmed. Getting right back to the purpose of this hearing. Because the Iranian people have been disarmed by the brutal, tyrannical regime within Iran. When are we going to finally learn that lesson?
That's what it all boils down to. No matter where you stand on the current operation in Iran, there's one pattern that keeps repeating. The country has seen wave after wave of protests. Yet the regime always finds a way to shut them down, no matter how big they get. It's not unique to it either. We've seen similar crackdowns in places like Belarus, Venezuela, and even countries behind the Iron Curtain during the Cold War. So when a so-called legal scholar and an actual college professor argue this shouldn't be a priority, it raises serious concerns, because everything we've witnessed, especially under the Biden administration, says that ignoring safeguards for the Second Amendment doesn't just sound naive, it feels completely out of touch.